Hello, Izumi Nation. Welcome to another Izumi cast. We had some issue getting an actual before and after recorded due to bad weather and tight time, but I had the pleasure last night, as of the recording of this, of heading up to go see the new Gundam NT movie. And while Rena was not there, which I'm sure several of you, including me, were disappointed by, I'm pleased to say that my good friend Paper Cosplay gave me a ride up, and I'm here to talk about it with my buddy Miles. Miles, say hi.
Hi, greetings, Azumi Nation.
we uh we got to see Gundam NT on the big screen,
In the front row.
which which is generally not the best place to be, but thankfully the Marcus Cinema has those great
Re-
reclining chairs. So yeah, no neck strain, thankfully.
See, given how the film opens, I'm glad it wasn't in 3D.
How many times are we going to watch the colony get dropped on Australia? I tell ya.
Infinite.
um,
It's Australia, no one cares.
ouch. I, I, I can tell you hail from a country that used to send your convicts to Australia.
I'll be honest, all the Australians I know personally have been very nice people.
That's fair. That's fair. I don't know any Australians personally. Please don't judge me, internet. Oh well. So yeah. So we had the incredible experience of seeing Gundam on a big screen. Now, a lot of the subscribers on my channel know my long history with this franchise and that it's been a bit of an obsession for me. Um, Miles, can you give the people at home a little bit of your background with Gundam before we get going?
Let's see. Oh, God, I think I kind of, first sort of became aware of Gundam like mid late 90s, my first forays into the internet and into anime. And it was originally, I think it would have been like the 0079 manga that Viz was putting out.
Oh wow. Okay.
This was before Wing. And I saw like the the oh no, wait, I remember. It was Animerica.
Okay.
I was picking up Animerica, and it was one of the it was when like Bandai were releasing the original movies,
Okay.
and one of the issues I picked up from like one of my comic shops back home in Brighton um had an article about the original Mobile Suit Gundam, which came complete with character, because the old Animericas, when it had articles, it always had like character line art and descriptions of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
So I was
Those
reading
were
this
the
article
days.
about about this show, which sounded really interesting. And then I started picking up the 0079 manga, which in retrospect is kind of crap, because while it's good for nicely detailed battles, it kind of skimped on like all the character drama stuff.
Mm.
And so the first bit of Gundam anime I saw was 0080
Oh geez. Okay.
um on VCD. That's how old I am. I had it on VCD.
Shiminy miminy. And
Um,
and so so you've been sticking with UC since the beginning,
Pretty
basically.
much. And then then I discovered the Gundam Project website
Oh God, Mark Simmons, who made that website, who was actually one of the consultants
on this movie,
on
I
this
think.
movie. No, yeah, there it was. The credits are great because that was one of the only names that was in English among the Japanese credits. So you and I, we've both been with this franchise for a while. Here we are. We're at the newest entry. I'm trying to. I guess. What are your first takeaways about this one?
Um, it was, it was a really good film. I mean, I wonder how much of that was just due to, you know, the event of seeing it in like like a proper big screen cinema.
Mm,
So I enjoyed the film. I wonder how much I would have enjoyed it if I'd watched it like as like a DVD purchase.
I was thinking about the same thing. And I'm always wary about that whenever I'm reviewing anime movies because Archimize and I have repeatedly admitted that had we not seen the Eureka 7 movie on a big screen, we probably wouldn't have been so generous to it.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't think this is one of those situations, honestly. I really think this was a very well made piece of Gundam media. And
It
it
is a
reminded me why I like Universal Century in the first place.
it's a well made piece of Gundam media. Um, it is. I think that like the biggest thing I'd have to say against it, it is in terms of everything it's referencing and going from. It is as a movie like to put in cinemas where people can go and see it on just like a random chance.
Yeah.
It is opaque.
Oh yeah. No. I like I think it was even you who said this to me when we were talking about Unicorn a while back. Unicorn is good, but there's a lot of required reading.
It's no
And this one beat out Unicorn for the amount of required reading in order for it to make any sense.
in terms of like following like the Universal Century series as a whole. The closest I can say to how this would feel to a non-viewer would be your first Marvel movie being Infinity War.
Yes, that's a perfect example. Because I I completely agree. Because I do think it's a very well made movie. I think it's a really good entry in the Gundam saga. But I cannot imagine trying to watch this as like a solo
And
experience.
that is, I would say that's definitely like a takeaway because I always feel something Stanley always used to say that every Spider-Man comic will be somebody's first Spider-Man comic.
Right.
And so you have to at least for the most part make it accessible on like the most fundamental level. Like you can have it like mid-story, but as long as you can kind of go, here's the characters, here is the dynamics, here are the stakes, and go.
And in that to that extent, I kind of wish we could have had someone with us who doesn't have a background with the series to try to get like an outside take on things because that
Yeah.
was I was thinking the same thing. I think this is a really well made piece of Gundam media, but um it's not a standalone piece.
No.
It's
It is
not a standalone piece at all. And that's not an insult to it. It's just it's not something that you could just sit
it's
down
not
and watch without the context of
it,
everything else.
it should not be somebody's first Gundam, no pun intended.
Although, um, this is a this isn't exactly a hot take, but this is a take that I'm sure will get someone's goat. I think this was a better wrap up to Unicorn than the last episode of Unicorn was. Like, I loved Unicorn. I really did. But I did feel like it left just a lot of things just kind of hanging there.
Mm.
And this ties up those plot threads very nicely, and I think it ties up its own plot threads very nicely as well. Um, I definitely was more engaged in the final battle in NT than I was the final battle of Unicorn. But
I,
That
I
might
like
just be me.
I like the time travel scene at the end of Unicorn.
That's fair. I liked it. I don't like how that final scene is paced because there's this you get like the fight between Benager and Full Frontal that's been built up to. You kind of have Benager confront the Neo Zeong. He breaks it. Then we get the time travel scene, but there's not really a denouement. It's just the time travel scene is over, and then the Neo Zeong just falls apart. And it's like, okay.
Um,
Kind of anticlimactic here, guys.
yeah. Is that before or after? No, it's before Minerva's speech.
Uh huh.
Because I think that's more of a denouement than, like, than Benaja versus, in terms of, like, the story.
I just don't think it's a good way to choreograph a fight scene on its own, though, because you like a battle for entertainment purposes needs to have a flow in order for it to be interesting, or it's just a bunch of punching, kicking, shooting, and no like emotional payoff for the audience.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I felt about how the Neo Zeong fight was handled in the last episode of Unicorn. I just didn't feel like there was a good payoff for the audience at home.
I can definitely see that.
Um,
I mean, I will admit I've only ever watched Unicorn, like the end of Unicorn once, and that was back in November, so my memory of it isn't the freshest.
I'll admit Unicorn of like the Gundam OVAs, Unicorn is the one that I rewatch most often. I
Yeah,
think to clarify, I think 0080 is the best OVA, but if I watched that one more than a few times, I'll get really
you
sad.
you probably you probably feel about watching 0080 as I feel about rewatching Tortured Children of Earth.
Oh
Not
no, I
any
feel the
time.
same about both, honestly.
It's like the only way to get me to rewatch Children of Earth would be to basically give me a quart of whiskey to work on through that miniseries.
No, I'm totally with you on that one. That is just a horribly unpleasant little mini. It's a good show. It's an excellent
It's
miniseries,
fantastic, but it will hurt. It will kill you.
and I never want to watch it again. Yeah, like I loved it. I never want to see it again, but I loved it.
M-
Um,
maybe my positivity towards like this movie and its pacing may have been because I watched the second and third Zeta movies in the space of a day.
I would, on that note, dear, first bless you. I'm glad you survived. Um, I, I would say if you have interest in Gundam NT and you aren't especially familiar with Universal Century Gundam, at the very, very least, uh, you need Zeta, Char's counterattack, and Unicorn if this is going to make any semblance of sense to you. And that's like the very minimum
Yeah.
least. um, so I guess get it. Let's no time like the present. We can get into the movie itself a little bit more. So this film, I don't feel the need to spoil too much, but we have we have an interesting setting of characters. It does go back to,
Th-
like we hinted earlier, we do get to see that colony drop again.
this movie jumps around in time about as much as like a Christopher Nolan film.
Uh-huh. It is very the Batman Begins school of how to do flashbacks.
It is flashback on top of flashback on top of dream sequence, and admittedly, that kind of at some points they would flash back to they would cut to flashbacks in the middle of battles, and sometimes that did kind of interrupt the flow of the movie.
No, that's fair. Um I really dig that kind of nonlinear storytelling, and I guess that's often my cup of tea,
Mm.
but I don't think that will work for everybody.
No.
And I totally understand
So
not being on board with that
it's
one.
like, was this always meant to be a movie?
That's what I'm curious about too.
Because that would, the if it was like a 3 or 4 part like a 3 or 4 part half-hour episode OVA, the flashbacks would definitely flow better.
I can't help but wonder, like, I have questions on the production side of things in general. Like, I wonder if Sunrise rushed this out. And keep in mind, this is coming from me, someone who really liked it. I want to emphasize this. I really liked the movie. But I also couldn't help but notice things like that during the third act, some of the animation of the mobile suits gets kind of wonky. And I'm curious if that was like were they rushed? Was that a factor? Uh Mecha wise, on one hand I really want to praise Sunrise because normally we get a new Gundam movie and that means zillions of brand new model kits for everyone to buy. But for the most part, even the new suits were mostly just slight redesigns of
Mm,
existing suits. Like the narrative Gundam itself is the only completely brand new design in this movie.
yeah.
Like it's the familiar we get Jestas. They're not the same Jestas we saw before, but they're basically Jestas. Uh, we get another Sinanju, this time rocking a closer color scheme and design to how it was before it got all full frontalized. We've got our gold unicorn flying around doing ghost stuff. Um, like there is part of me that is convinced that this was production wise they might were likely rushing this one out, but I the story doesn't feel like a rush job to me.
No, it's a good story, and it definitely, it succeeds on the merits of the story, on the merits of the story, on the merits of the narrative.
Right. Ah, see what you
See,
did
see,
there.
I have been trying to wonder why the suit is called the narrative. Like, okay, you've got like, you got NT new type. Um,
Because we called the last one UC, which could stand for Universal Century or Unicorn. So we got to come up with something that can be NT, because this is new type, and we need it to be something else as well. I'm completely convinced that is the entirety of the logic here.
more than likely, that was me trying to think of like a really sort of nifty, like in-universe fanon. Like, they're trying to cover up that there's a third unicorn unit, so they're trying to control the narrative. I hate
Which
myself. I quit. Goodbye.
that's not the worst theory though. Just so I mean, like all things considered, that is not the worst explanation for the name. Um, yeah. So we have this. Well, like you just alluded to, yeah. It's despite the fact that this is another bombastic psychics fighting each other with robots movie. I liked how personal the main stakes of the story were. We have these
Yeah.
three characters um, who were presumed as new type candidates during the 1 year war when they called the colony drop before it happened and saved a small town in Australia as a result. And then, they get experimented on by the Titans and we cut to the present and like the aftermath of all of them dealing with the both the awfulness of their childhood and also all of the insanity that has been
Life.
yeah the entirety of the universal century from that point onward. I was I I saw some reviews from when it came out in Japan, dunking on the characters, and honestly, I don't really agree with that. I really felt for most of the characters in this series, or movie, excuse me. Michelle had, when you understand where she's coming from, I really felt for her. Rita was enigmatic in all the best ways.
Michelle
Zoltan.
was Michelle was interesting because when you have like a female character in Gundam basically kind of be a manipulative, I know, I hate to say it, manipulative bitch. You
Hmm.
never get like you never have that be the character turn or the character or see the justification and motivation for what turned her to that and then how she works her way back from that.
We sort of got that in Seed, but the fandom won't acknowledge that that's what happened. Looking at you, Flay Ulster. Um, yeah, I will stand Flay Ulster. Incidentally, I think she's a. I actually think that there's a lot going on with that character.
She's an she's an interesting character.
Um, but yeah, no, I see. I definitely agree with you on Michelle. I really just her whole thing and some of the twists that they pulled with her character were honestly both welcome and fascinating. Uh, I loved Zoltan, the main Neo Zeon pilot we have. I went in expecting him to be. I wasn't expecting to think anything of him. It's like, okay, we got our requisite Gundam villain. Looks like some angry scene kid, whatever. And lo and behold, honestly, Zoltan is probably my favorite villain in recent Gundam history. Like, I actually think he works really well, and that he's an excellent and
He has a lot of he has a lot of personality.
he has tons of personality.
It's like it is he is the ultimate contrast to Yona, the hero, who is very kind is very sort of not a personality.
Mm-hmm.
He has like Yona has very little. You get very little sense of him as a character, as a human, or as like a human being.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that, but I also really liked a comment that you made earlier today from a conversation we were having that this might be them trying to parallel Yona with his Gundam,
Yeah,
which they call this. A lot of them call it the Scarecrow because it's this kind of ugly, nothing but skin and like if it were humanoid, it would just be like an empty looking shell. And you kind of get that impression from Yona that he's kind of dead inside.
yeah. That that the best part of him died with someone else
Mm-hmm.
in in the film, but to just to say it would be to give away a huge spoiler.
Mm-hmm. But suffice to say, it's yeah, he it's really you I do think that they were trying to I think that there's merit to what you were saying though cuz one of the early shots that I thought was really haunting in the movie is after you see Yona get back from his sortie, they're taking his normal suit off of him and they're matching the cuts of like removing this huge, bulky, totally almost comedically oversized flight suit from him, and at the same time they cut back to removing the extra equipment from
The
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 narrative.
NT.
Mm-hmm. And it's like okay, like maybe that's literally what they were going for is that this guy and his mech they match
Hmm.
in a lot of ways.
It is like in a different Gundam show, he would be sort of like like one of the new type kind of enemy aces who turns up like midway through the show, who's kind of emotionally you can see him being in Gundam X as one of the new types they try and save throughout the show.
In general, that's something that I think is interesting. Is that I get that vibe from most of the main characters in this. That in any other Gundam show, they would have been secondary characters. Like
Yeah,
going back to Zoltan, normally the unhinged crazy pilot is like the villain's right hand man, not the main
not the
antagonist
villain.
of the
I wasn't
story.
expecting him to be the villain.
Right.
To be fair, I think I kind of went in expecting Michelle to be the villain. I was expecting like a turn,
Mm-hmm.
or not that she turns, but that Yona turns against her and her machinations.
Yeah, I was kind of expecting that too. So it was a really pleasant surprise that they didn't do that to her,
Mm.
frankly. Um, the and I enjoyed some of the other I enjoyed some of the other characters too. We can't really go into Rita too much without spoiling like huge swaths of the movie,
Without just
but
spoiling everything,
uh-huh.
it's see, part of me, I was kind of thinking, this morning I was thinking about, okay, I was thinking about Unicorn and how we had a character who, who's who's Audrey Hepburn. You had
Right.
Audrey Byrne, and then you have a character called Rita, who I started thinking Audrey Byrne, Rita Hayworth. Um, and then I was thinking of the film Roman Holiday, which they reference in Unicorn, which
Mm-hmm.
stars Gregory Peck, and Gregory Peck was in an adaptation of Moby Dick, and this film made me think about Moby Dick. Like this is a white whale story. We have all the different characters trying to catch this
Mm.
almost supernatural monster of a beast.
Yeah. The way that the Unicorn 3 um and I'm going to call it the Phoenix. That is one of my biggest weird issues with this dub. The dub was overall very good. However, they're really inconsistent on if they say Phoenix or
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 Phoenix.
and I'm not clear on if those are meant to be pronounced differently, like that the Gundam's official name is Phoenix, but it's a phoenix because they keep using rebirth imagery with it. So clearly they're going for Phoenix, but mm, like that was really but yeah, the way that they portray the Phoenix in this movie, it is very supernatural. Um and I think that's going to make a lot of people angry. Sorry to get off on another tangent there, but I
It, it,
go ahead.
no, it really depends on where you lie on the new type equals psychic superpower
Mhm.
end of the spectrum. I'll be honest. Ever since in like the original Gundam, you had the new type kind of psychic connections. Then Tomino went and did Aura Battle of Dunbine, and then from like most of the 80s, new type powers equal aura power, essentially.
No, I can agree with that. For me, I really like the weird psychic powers that come with new typedom. And I've enjoyed seeing those explored more. I respect that that's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but I've really enjoyed that. And on that note, I just think it's fascinating that it feels like there's this huge bit of intellectual dishonesty in the Gundam community, that there are so many people who will try to claim that most of this psychic power stuff that new types have weren't a thing before Unicorn. And that's just an outright
What?
lie. Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
like
um,
that's just an outright lie.
Um, I I saw Zeta, I saw Double Zeta, I saw Shaw's counterattack. I also saw those in this movie.
Yeah, nothing that we have seen in Unicorn or NT, in my humble opinion, is any less plausible than any of the other malarkey that we saw in those movies.
You know,
It
it,
seems like the next logical step to me.
it's it's like the end, the end of Shaw's counterattack ends with essentially a giant psychic miracle.
Mm-hmm.
And that when they reference like oh shit, what do they call it in Unicorn? Like
Axis Flash.
Axis shock
Oh
or
yeah,
axis
Axis
flash.
Shock. Yeah, sorry.
And people,
Axis Flash. That's I was thinking of Access Flash because I was watching Gridman again. Don't judge me.
you know, when people talk about that moment, it is, you know, they talk about it as like akin to a miracle. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I really liked about this film, about the talking about of new type technology, is that they refer to like the technology of the unicorn and the psychomium as essentially a singularity event
Mm-hmm.
moment for mankind. Like
Yeah.
that is going into like it is we have Gundam always sort of been like like all people equate Gundam to to hard SF, but this one really
I
kind of
think you
went
could do that with
to
some
think to
Gundam, but I
like
don't think UC is a good one to do hard sci-fi with. I
no,
just don't.
this definitely went it kind of in a way that I think Double O kind of does. Really hinges on the singularity sci-fi and post-human, definitely hinging into some post-humanism, like post-humanism, transhumanism,
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with everything with the Phoenix in this movie. Just
and just how some of the characters talk about what new types could offend, what the end point of new types and new type powered technology could be.
I think it's interesting that the first lines of dialogue we hear in the movie are the characters talking about what it means to be a new type. And more specifically, Rita asking her friends if they believe in heaven. And you get these kind of dismissive responses, and Rita just casually, "Don't you think it's different for new types, though?" I, I don't know. I like my new type stuff hippy dippy and weird,
It
and
is
this swung hard into that weird
it
hippy dippy new
it
type
this is
stuff.
that it is kind of strange that it's you have this kind of this like Eastern philosophy when it comes to like the new types which come very much in like the late 70s, and then we're making we're watching this film in 2019, and it all kind of feels very sort of outdated and ludicrous, but they're trying to whereas Unicorn was trying to really flesh out what the politics and ideology of the original shows were. Like, the idea of Xeon as a religion for people who lived in space.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas here, like this film is trying to flesh out what is the new type as not just an ideology or a symbol as it was used in Zeta or Double Zeta, but just what is this and where does it go from here?
Mm-hmm.
And one what the thing is with the next whole bunch of the Gundam franchise being the calendar of the next 100 years or the universal century, how much of what is here is basically putting in place the pieces for the stories to come.
There is some stuff I wanted to get into, and if depending on how you're feeling about it, I do kind of want to do a quick spoiler thing, like
Okay,
just a spoiler discussion. But is there anything else you want to kind of talk about before we move into spoiler territory?
okay. Two things. One, at first, I thought the kid who was Michelle
Mm-hmm.
um was actually the assistant in the future.
Oh, Brick, yeah.
Yeah. Um, I thought that Brick was actually that kid
My
because
biggest issue with Brick is that every time they said his name, all I could think of was Steve Carell's character from Anchorman.
see it's Gundam. You get dumb names with Gundam
It's true. No
has
one
some.
has a normal name in this
No one has a
franchise.
normal name. I'm still pissed that no one has decided to use Elbow Smash yet. If Tomino had finished Double Zeta, we would have gotten a character called Elbow Smash. This is the same guy who gave us the character Shot Weapon in Dunbine.
I had successfully forgotten about Shot Weapon until just now. I hope you're happy.
You can never forget Shot Weapon. This is the guy who who in Zarbungle gave us a character called Carrying Cargo.
I freaking love Tomino. Bless, bless his angry, angry
It's
heart.
like, Tomino, you so cray cray. Oh,
Love
oh,
him to
so
death.
I'm still gonna say I think Brick might be the first gay best friend in Gundam.
It's definitely one of the few examples of a Gundam has had some real issues with its representation
Gundam
of
Gundam
gay
just has
characters.
issues. Gundam just has issues with
Well,
women, with men, with alternate sexualities.
it hasn't been until the last couple, like, we've had characters coded as gay in
Mm.
Gundam, but like they were, unfortunately, that it includes like Angelo Sauper from Unicorn, who I love him, but he's also, this crazed pervert. Um and then it wasn't until recently we've had Brick in this, and we had one of
Is
the
it
ki- one of the
one
kids in
that
Iron Blooded
I'm
Orphans,
yeah.
yeah. And they knocked that character. Considering that Iron Blooded Orphans had a lot of problems with gender politics, they knocked that gay character like out of the park. They did a really good job with him. Like,
At least in this film, no one had to dress up in drag, like in Double Zeta.
just keep reminding us that that
Thank you,
was a
Joe.
thing.
So, do
Oh
you
my
want to talk
god.
about Moon Moon?
I don't want to talk. No one wants to talk about Moon Moon.
I still think that Moon Moon is like the M. Night Shyamalan film The Village, where the elders are just pretending that they've been forgotten for like 70 years, and that they're just like tricking the kids.
It would make more sense because that is such a stupid. If for some reason you haven't watched Double Zeta, and I'm gonna be honest with you, you're not missing too much. The Moon Moon two-parter might be the worst two episodes in all of Gundam. Like, I'm being completely sincere with you guys right now. It's the pits, you guys. It's really bad. Yeesh. Is there? I'm really glad we got the chance to see this. I'm glad Fathom Events ran it. I wish they would have run it for more nights, and I
Yeah.
really, really hope that if you didn't get to see it, that it is on PSN or something soon so you can watch it. Uh, the Blu-ray release was announced, but the only announcement that they have is a limited edition one on Right Stuff, and
Ugh.
that's $100. And if real talk, you guys, this is Nozomi Entertainment, Right Stuff. If it's anything like what they did with Origin and Unicorn, they'll have a not $100 release a few months later.
Yeah, this is
I liked this movie, but I didn't $100 like this movie.
I 1250 like this movie. If you take into account how much I paid for food in the bar beforehand, I $30.50 enjoyed this film.
Yeah, it's like fair.
But
It is. I think it's a good Gundam movie, but yeah, like I wouldn't. I'm not
it,
going to spend $100
it,
on a Blu-ray.
it's like the closest amount to that amount I have spent on anime is when I bought Gatchaman on Blu-ray, and that's 105 episodes. That's my money's worth.
Um, the only time I've ever spent that much, well, that kind of money on an anime was when I imported the Macross Frontier movies,
Ah, hang
and
on.
there was no other option for that, and it
Um,
came with two art books, so I
I
feel vindicated there.
I think I may have spent that much on the Votoms DVDs back in the day.
Whew.
Um, but that was like the set with like the nice metal.
Right. I remember that metal box. That was a really nice release. That was
That was a really nice release for a fantastic show, which you can get in a couple of weeks for like $40.
yeah.
No one has no excuse to buy Votoms now.
Yeah, retro. If any of you guys, if you're a UC Gundam fan and you like that retro anime, or per se, if you disagree with what we were saying about new types and you would like a more grounded, realistic mecha show, Votomes might be your cup of tea.
I think I prefer Votoms to a lot of Gundam.
My my wife thinks Votomes is the best mecha anime ever made.
A
I'll put that out there.
Votoms does PTSD really damn well. Like it. Anyway, this isn't the Votoms cast.
We I'm not opposed to doing one in the future. I heard tell they might also be licensing the OVAs, and that has me because those never got released over here in the states. So that's
Bye.
real. Um. So I guess with that, yeah, no. I highly recommend checking out Gundam NT if and when you get the chance. And now I want to cut off a little bit of the podcast to discuss spoilers. So if you don't want any of the big plot points spoiled, don't feel bad about clicking off of the video at this point. All right, so wrapping up with some spoiler thoughts. So the main thing, I do you have anything really on your mind that you want to discuss? Because the main thing I have that's spoilery is that I do have a Goofy fan theory that I'm either going to get a lot of hate for or high fives for.
Okay, go for it. I may also have a Goofy fan theory.
So my Scott, our mutual friend Scott, who gave us the ride out to the film, who also really enjoyed this. Um, while we were talking, um, about the ramifications of of the Axis shock, because they explained that when Benager knocked the mobile suits away that were chasing him at the end of Unicorn, that it looked like their generators were taken apart as if they had never been built. Um, so what if the long game that we're going for is one of these OVA movies revealing that the unicorn will eventually change hands enough times that nano machines are integrated into it, and shocker, the unicorn was the turn A the whole time. You
Is
know,
it
like
high five or what was the alternative?
you can, send me hate mail like I normally get.
I'm not gonna send you hate mail.
I'm just saying, like, I can't help but think when, with how it deconstructs things, I can't help but think of the Moonlight Butterfly from Turn A.
That's valid.
And I just think it would be interesting if the Moonlight Butterfly system started out as like some add-on to the Psycho Frame system, and it just nanomachines corrupted it into the Moonlight Butterfly we know and fear.
Machines, but Gundam Hammer.
The best weapon, yes, but we don't
No,
get
no,
it
no,
that
no, no.
often.
The Mega Javelin, the Beam Javelin is the best weapon.
Oh, excuse me.
No, no, wait, sorry, no, the Super Napalm.
We definitely know it's real. You just gotta believe us on this.
Yes.
All right. Did you have any other?
See, you see, here's my kind of crazy fan theory.
Okay.
Um, have they ever said what happened to the new Gundam from CCA?
No, they haven't.
Because I don't know if okay, the spoiler is, Rita is an ex new type, and either her spirit or whatever has taken over the Phoenix.
Hmm.
Um, Part of me was thinking, did what happened to her essentially did that happen to Armor at the end of CCA? That because I was kind of expecting that there would be a body in there, like there would be a corpse in the Phoenix when we see inside it.
Yeah, I was kind of expecting that too. I feel like that would have been. I'm kind of glad there wasn't because I feel like that would have been a huge emotional hit in
Yeah,
an already really emotional scene in the movie. I think that would have taken it in another direction that I don't think my heart would have been prepared for. Maybe I'm selling myself short, but yeah, that.
there was some definitely there was some emotional choker moments in that film.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Um,
not all of them were, being in the front row seat getting a colony in the face.
the when Yona finally sits in the Phoenix. See, now I'm doing it. But when Yona finally sits in Unicorn Unit 3, I'm working around this. Um that was just kind of a straight up Gynax scene of him getting there. Like as the narrative is just, parts falling off, core fighter flying through space, and then this super robot ending. It's in I feel like that could have not worked, but for me that scene worked beautifully.
This isn't the very first kind of Gynax thing because one of the descriptions of like the endpoint of new types is that everyone kind of shedding their physical shells and just basically existing as consciousness in the psycho frame.
Mm-hmm.
Which is when I kind of leaned over to you and said, "Isn't this basically is it third impact or fourth impact?
Third impact.
Third impact."
Yeah.
It's like, isn't this essentially the human instrumentality project?
See, Gendo, you didn't have to turn your wife into a robot monster. You could have just built a world-ending mecha.
You should have just left a note. This is why you always leave a note.
the there were a lot of things that the finale I just was on the edge of my seat the whole time.
Mm.
I think that they had an excellent setup for the final battle, and I enjoyed almost every second of it.
What one of the sound effects I think was from the Neo Zeon. Um, I swear they took the Edeon they took the sound effect of the Edeon gun from Space Runaway Edeon and put it in this film.
You're not the only person who's pointed that out. I've had someone else say that to me, that some Edeon sound effects wandered their way in here.
Get your Edeon out of my Gundam.
Hey, that's another one that you can actually get here in the States now that I never thought I would be able to buy here in
Ah,
America. It is
ah.
2019 is weird, man. A Space Runaway Yedeon, Votomes, and Dunbine are all in print again. Or one of those for the first time ever.
Zarbungle and Edeon are in print in the States for the first time. Next week, we get the original Yamato, Space Battleship Yamato manga.
Uh-huh.
You know, Christmas has come early.
It is a good time to be a classic anime fan. But yeah, overall, I guess going back to where we started, and I guess to wrap this up, it was narrative worth your time? I would very much say yes.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it, and I guess if you're listening to this spoiler section, you probably have opinions too. But for right now, um,
I if this is the start of seeing more Gundam on the big screen in the West or in America. I don't know if this had a I don't think this had a UK release.
maybe I don't think it did.
That's a shame.
That is a shame. I Oh, okay, one more spoiler thing. Because we all joked about this on the ride back. Um, I am a little bit disappointed that the end of the movie didn't have Yona coming into a dark room with with bright Noah sitting there waiting for him, being like, Yona Basta, I bet you thought let me tell you, you aren't the only new type. Let me tell you about the Gundam Initiative. I was really expecting, because Benager makes his little cameo near the end, and the way he's talking, I was really expecting him to be like, I'm putting together the late UC Avengers. We
No,
got Camille, Judo, Jonah, and me. It's gonna be great.
no. How they could have ended it, which would have broken how they could have ended it, which could have broken everyone's minds, is that Yona enters a dark room, the light flicks on, and it's Koji Kabuto from Mazen Gasi, and he says, "I'm here to tell you about the Super Robot Wars Initiative."
That would be the most amazing way to promote the next SRW movie. It would break Gundam canon, but it would be.
It would break canon, but a fish, I'll just throw up my hands and just go, "Best movie ever." Even more so than Psycho. And this film had plenty of Psycho, but more of the frame variety than the Alfred Hitchcock variety.
I mean, we had Psycho frames, we had Zoltan. Yeah, it was great.
So Zoltan is like the most, for a series which has the dumbest names. Zoltan is an 80s car is the villain name from like an 80s kids cartoon.
Yeah, that's an anime. That's like an '80s anime dub name. That's
That
not
that
a normal name.
that's a villain. That's a villain from Voltron.
General Zoltan, what robeast do you have for me today?
I am Sven, and that is the evil Zoltan.
God. All right, this has gone into crazy territory.
This has gone into Psycho Frame territory.
God damn it. As far as that goes, I hope. Did any of you guys see Gundam NT? Did you have any thoughts about it? Please let me know. Put your comments down below. Share this video with friends, and as always, keep on spocking in the free world. I'm Nick Izumi.
And I'm Miles Reed Lobato.
And we'll catch you on the flip side. Have a great time, everybody.
Flippity, 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 flip.